Chapter 2, The Proposal. The North Wolf's Wood. Oak trees towered overhead, and the grey-green needles of sentinel pines intertwined like layered canopies, cutting the weak morning light into thin fragments. In the dim forest, distant hoofbeats echoed, growing louder. From between the shadows of the trees, Galon Glover emerged. He wore hardened leather armor, a long sword hanging at his waist as he rode forward. 5 trained soldiers of Deepwood Motte surrounded him, alert to any danger lurking in the woods. Yet aside from the occasional distant howl, they encountered no beasts. By the time dawn finally broke, the 6 riders reached the edge of the Wolf's Wood. Galon spurred forward, exiting the treeline. The moment he emerged, his view widened. Before him, beyond the vast northern wilderness, stood a colossal castle of grey stone. Winterfell. The heart of northern power. Galon reined in his horse and stared at the ancient fortress, desire burning in his eyes. For a long moment, he simply looked. Then he turned to the guards beside him. "Brothers," he called, pointing toward Winterfell. "We're here. Check the gifts and raise our banner." A soldier unfurled the sigil of House Glover, a silver-mailed fist on a field of red. The banner snapped loudly in the wind. The others checked the horses and the cargo, ensuring nothing had been forgotten. Only after everything was confirmed did Galon gesture forward. "Faster," he commanded. "Winterfell stew doesn't wait for late tongues." With a flick of the reins, he galloped toward the castle. The rest followed close behind. Along the road, the captain riding to his right laughed loudly. "Stew? Ha, there's more waiting for you than food. Lady Sansa surely waits as well." The others broke into laughter. Galon allowed a small smile, neither denying nor correcting him. This journey had one purpose: to formally propose to Lord Ned Stark and seek an engagement with Sansa Stark. Just thinking about Ned's letter sent a rush of anticipation through his chest. Winterfell was close now. He struck his horse again. Hi-ah! As the horse sped up, memories surged forward. Galon had arrived in Westeros half a year ago. He had awoken in the north as the son of Galbart Glover, the Lord of Deepwood Motte, a character who never existed in the original story. At first, he was stunned. He had watched the show and remembered clearly, Galbart never married and never sired a child, not even a single bastard besides his adopted son, Lawrence Snow. Yet here Galon was an invented heir. Galbart's lingering injuries from the Greyjoy rebellion had left him weakened and unable to recover. And so Galon had become the lawful heir to Deepwood Motte. After struggling with the absurdity, he eventually stopped questioning fate. He was here. Surviving mattered more than confusion. More importantly, time was running out. Ned would soon leave for King's Landing. And not long after reaching the capital, both Ned and King Robert would die in a web of conspiracies. Their deaths would ignite the War of the 5 Kings. At first, Robb Stark led northern forces to victory after victory. But that ended when Robb and his mother made disastrous mistakes, losing nearly the entire northern army including Deepwood Motte's soldiers in the Riverlands. Then, while the north bled abroad, the Ironborn struck, seizing Deepwood Motte and capturing House Glover. Galon knew one truth. If he did nothing, he would die either at the Iron Islands' hands or on some doomed battlefield. To survive, he needed military independence. Or he needed to betray House Stark like the Boltons would. But betrayal was never an option. So he sought another path. Sansa Stark. If I marry Sansa, I gain legitimacy over Winterfell. With that authority, I can redirect northern forces and change our fate. With support from northern houses, I can protect Deepwood Motte. Perhaps, even reach for the Iron Throne. With that resolve, he approached his father and proposed the marriage. Galbart, already at death's door, gave his blessing and ordered a letter to Ned Stark. But the reply came too late. Galbart died before the response arrived. At the funeral, Ned promised that once Galon completed his duties as heir, he would give him an answer. So Galon spent 6 months learning governance and strengthening Deepwood Motte's forces. Then, days ago, Ned finally sent word inviting him to Winterfell. The meaning was obvious. Now, with Winterfell in sight, his heart hammered faster. The thundering hooves startled Winterfell's Hunter's Gate guards. They spotted the Glover banner and shouted, "It's House Glover! Inform the Lord!" One guard sprinted toward the inner yard. Moments later, as Galon reached the gate, Robb Stark appeared to greet him. Galon dismounted at once. "Robb!" The two embraced warmly. "It's been too long." Robb laughed. They stepped back and looked each other over. Robb whistled. "You've grown again." They had first met at Galbart's funeral, both boys of similar height. Now Galon stood a full head taller, broad-shouldered, powerful, imposing. His body had changed rapidly these past months. He felt sharper, stronger, quicker beyond normal limits. In Deepwood Motte, he had defeated 10 elite soldiers and his uncle Robert at once. Training only made him grow stronger. He was about to respond when he noticed the small grey wolf beside Robb. "Oh? A dire wolf?" he asked, feigning surprise. Robb proudly nodded. But Galon's thoughts darkened. If Robb already has his dire wolf, then Robert Baratheon must be nearby. The royal procession is almost at Winterfell. So Ned wants me present when the king arrives. That meant one thing: the marriage was nearly settled. But the king could still destroy it on a whim. Without Sansa, Galon would lose everything: Winterfell, the north, and the future. With a colder thought, he whispered to himself, "If Joffrey becomes a problem, then perhaps I should remove him before he ever becomes king." Before the idea could settle, the dire wolf bristled, baring teeth and growling at Galon. Robb blinked in confusion. "Grey Wind!" Galon froze for a heartbeat. The wolf had sensed his killing intent. He forced a confused expression as Robb crouched to calm the pup. Only when Grey Wind relaxed did they continue. Robb led Galon toward the inner yard. The castle bustled with preparation decorations, banners, cooks, smiths, and servants rushing about. "Seems the king arrives soon," Galon observed. Passing the kitchens, the smell of meat stew drifted out. Galon chuckled. "Robb, have someone bring stew for my men. They rode all night and deserve a meal." Robb agreed immediately and called for servants to prepare food. Galon pulled aside his captain. "Eat and rest. You've earned it." Only when his men entered the kitchen did he continue walking with Robb. "I didn't expect you to care so much for soldiers," Robb remarked. "You've changed." Galon shook his head. "They swore loyalty to me. A lord protects his own. It's the bare minimum. Compared to Lord Ned, I have far to go." Robb fell silent, thinking deeply. After a moment, he smiled with newfound respect. "Come. My father is waiting." They crossed the yard, passed the forge, entered a long corridor, and finally reached the great hall. Robb stepped in first. "Father, Galon has arrived." Galon followed. At the far end of the hall, seated with quiet authority, sat a man with dark brown hair and a short grey beard. Ned Stark. Chapter 3, A Spoken Betrothal. "Good day, Lord Stark." Galon stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Ned rose from his seat and walked down from the dais, lifting Galon back to his feet. "You've grown stronger," Ned said, patting his shoulder with approval. "It seems you've worked hard these past months." "To guard Deepwood Motte for my lord, I must have the strength to do it," Galon replied with a faint smile. "And before my father passed, his final words warned me never to bring shame to our house. I dare not slack." A flicker of admiration passed through Ned's eyes as he nodded. "Good lad. If Sansa is to be yours, I have no worries." Galon had expected this outcome. Ned Stark was a man of honor, yet hearing it aloud still sent a rush of excitement through his chest. Still, he asked again, just to be sure. "Lord Stark, you mean Robb laughed beside them. What else could he mean? Galon, we'll be family. Ned nodded in agreement. Joy surged through Galon. He bent again in gratitude, but Ned stopped him. But Sansa is still young, Ned added. The marriage will wait 2 more years. You have no objection. Galon shook his head quickly. He only needed the legitimacy of the agreement. The date was irrelevant. Ned continued. You must have seen it already. Winterfell prepares for the king's arrival. He paused before adding, I intend for the king and the old gods together to witness the betrothal. Stay in Winterfell for a few days. Once it is done, you may return to Deepwood Motte. Galon immediately nodded. As you command, my lord. He paused, then asked with feigned curiosity, my lord, why is his grace suddenly travelling north? Ned fell silent for a breath, grief flickering in his eyes. Jonnarin's death weighed heavily on him. But instead of answering, Ned shifted the topic. Robb, he said, show Galon the castle and introduce him to your brothers and sisters. Robb nodded, ready to lead Galon away, but Ned suddenly spoke again. Galon, one more thing. Ned's voice grew serious. I have a ward, Theon Greyjoy, son of Balon. With the king arriving soon, I expect no trouble between the two of you. Robb blinked in confusion, not understanding the tension. Galon, however, understood perfectly. Ned wasn't asking, he was warning him not to start a fight. Galon held Ned's gaze and answered firmly. The North remembers. Forgive me, but I cannot show courtesy to an Ironborn. Ned exhaled in frustration. Of course Deepwood Motte and the Iron Islands had blood between them, not mere rivalry. Ironborn had raided the North for generations, and House Glover had always been the first to repel them. Their housewords' blood-forged deep roots were not poetic exaggeration, but history. And 9 years ago, during Balon Greyjoy's rebellion, Galon's father had led Deepwood men into battle. On the assault at Pike, he had been struck by a cold arrow loosed by Theon's brother, Marron Greyjoy. The wound never healed. It eventually killed him. There was no path where Galon and the Ironborn ever stood on the same side. One would fall or the other would. But Ned's voice hardened. This is not a request. It is an order. The North cannot lose honor before the king. Galon understood the meaning beneath the command. Do nothing dishonorable, and Ned would not interfere. He bowed his head. Yes, Lord Stark. Only then did Ned breathe out, relieved. He signalled to Robb. Still oblivious to the tension, Robb grinned and grabbed Galon by the arm. Come, Galon. Winterfell won't explore itself. Galon nodded to Ned once more before being led out. Ned watched them go with a troubled sigh. Winter is coming, he murmured. Catelyn entered just in time to hear it. Ned, she asked softly, stepping closer. What troubles you now? Ned shook his head. Nothing. I was only thinking of the feud between House Glover and House Greyjoy. Understanding lit behind her eyes, followed by dissatisfaction. You should not have agreed to the marriage, she whispered urgently. The king will be here in 3 days. With your history, he will surely propose a royal match. Sansa could become queen. The moment she spoke, Ned's expression hardened. They had argued this too many times already. Catelyn, he said, cutting her off, we have spoken about this. My bannerman fought for me. He bled for me. He died because he answered my call. His last request was for this marriage. Would you have me spit on honor and forget loyalty? Catelyn fell silent because she knew nothing mattered more to him than honor. But silence did not equal surrender. She simply lowered her eyes, hiding the resentment twisting beneath. Let Robert speak to him, she thought. If anyone can change his mind, it is the king. No matter what he says, I refuse to let Sansa marry into that house. Meanwhile, Galon walked alongside Robb, unaware of the silent battle already forming against his future. And even if he knew, he wouldn't care. With Ned's word given, the betrothal was iron. Catelyn's complaints meant nothing. Soon, they reached the training yard just in time to see young Bran practicing archery. Galon paused, watching the boy draw back the bowstring with determined effort. Winterfell and his future were finally within reach. Chapter 4, The Starks. In the training yard, Jon Snow stood behind Bran, patiently correcting his stance and the way he drew the bowstring. Nearby, little Rickon giggled loudly from atop a practice saddle mounted on a wooden rack. He swung a wooden sword with great enthusiasm, fully immersed in his own knightly adventure. 3 young dire wolves waited beneath the rack, sitting as still as statues. Their ears twitched now and then, eyes never leaving their masters. Servants and stable hands passing by sometimes slowed their steps to watch. When one of Bran's arrows once again missed the mark and buried itself in a barrel beside the target, soft chuckles echoed across the yard. Against the far wall leaned Theon Greyjoy, arms crossed, posture lazy, face bored. With a sharp snap of the bowstring, Bran loosed another arrow. Again, it missed. Bran stomped the ground in frustration. Watching the scene, Galon smiled faintly and asked Robb beside him. "That must be Bran." Robb nodded and called out, "Bran." Bran turned at the sound of his brother's voice. He saw Robb waving at him, and beside him stood a tall, broad-shouldered stranger. "Robb." Bran blinked, confused, still gripping his bow. Rickon, however, reacted far faster. His eyes sparkled with delight and he waved his wooden sword wildly in greeting, as if a hero had returned from glorious war. Jon quickly grabbed him before the boy toppled off the rack and helped him to the ground. The moment his feet touched earth, Rickon sprinted toward Robb with his shaggy little dire wolf bounding behind him. Within seconds, he wrapped his arms around Robb's leg. Robb chuckled and ruffled his hair affectionately. Galon stood quietly beside them, watching the warmth of the Stark family with a calm expression. After a moment, Robb introduced them. "This is Rickon, my youngest brother. Rickon, this is Galon, Sansa's betrothed." Rickon didn't fully understand the word, but he understood introductions. He lifted his wooden sword proudly and declared, "Hi. I'm Rickon." Then paused, pointed to the pup at his feet, and added confidently, "And this is my fuzzy wolf." The dire wolf barked once, as if to confirm it. Galon smiled gently. "Well met, Rickon. I'm Galon Glover." Rickon blinked, likely unsure what that truly meant, but Jon Snow's expression shifted. His eyes flicked briefly toward Theon, who still watched from a distance. Robb continued the introductions. "Bran you already know. And this is Jon, also my brother." Then he added with emphasis, looking at Jon, "And you heard, father has agreed to Galon's betrothal to Sansa." Jon offered a respectful bow. "Lord Galon. I am Jon Snow. Welcome to Winterfell." A flicker of something unreadable passed through Galon's eyes. He answered quietly, "I know your name, Jon." Jon stiffened. His jaw tightened, expecting insult. But Galon's voice was warm. "Half a year ago when Robb and I met, he spoke of you. He said you were skilled with sword and bow and that wolf blood runs strong in your veins. I thought he was merely praising a brother. But now that I see you myself, I find he spoke nothing but truth." Jon froze, then flushed red with pride. To be acknowledged as one with the wolf blood, the heritage of true Starks, was something no one had ever said aloud to him. Before Jon found words, Robb grinned and said, "Of course. Jon's better than me with a sword. We should arrange a spar between the two of you. I've always wondered who would win." Galon chuckled. "Then let the 3 of us spar someday. I'm curious if you've improved since last time, Robb." Robb groaned. "I doubt it. I haven't trained nearly enough lately." Bran's eyes widened. To him, Robb was already a knight in all but name, and yet he admitted he wasn't equal to this stranger. He studied Galon again, tall, powerful, imposing, and silently concluded, "He looks too much like a bear." Sansa won't like that. She likes princes. He looks like he belongs to House Mormont more than House Glover. As Bran's imagination drifted, Galon's gaze shifted subtly toward him, then paused at his legs. A quiet sigh passed through his thoughts. 3 days remained until the king's arrival. 3 days until Bran climbed that tower. 3 days until his fate shattered and the north with it. Galon felt sympathy, but not enough to interfere. The timeline needed to remain intact, at least for now. A crippled raven was easier to guide than one that could fly freely. And through Bran, one day, he might glimpse the true forces behind this world: gods, magic, and the unseen. But for now, he smiled and asked gently, "Bran, do you know why you keep missing the target?" Bran shook his head. Galon tapped his bow. "You're looking too hard. Stop relying only on your eyes, trust the feeling. Try again." Bran hesitated, then readied another arrow. "Relax your arm. Lift the bow just a bit." Galon adjusted the boy's stance, then stepped back. The arrow flew. This time it struck the target. Bran stared, stunned. Then he erupted into cheers. "I hit it! I did it!" Robb laughed. "We've been trying for weeks and Galon teaches you in one attempt. A true son of the Wolf's Wood." Galon merely smiled politely as voices around the yard praised the boy's success. Only Theon rolled his eyes. "It's just one arrow," he muttered. "And that Glover fool flat Aaron a bastard like he's royalty? Pathetic." He pushed himself off the wall and approached with a smug grin. "Robb." Robb nodded, unaware of the tension. "Galon, this is Theon, my father's ward." Galon only gave a dismissive nod, not even looking at him, and returned to Bran. "Remember the feeling just now. When your body learns it, every shot will find its mark." Jon's stomach tightened. He knew Theon too well. Silence stretched thin as ice. Then Theon scoffed loud enough for all to hear. "So, Glovers teach archery now? I thought you forest folk only knew how to chop trees and piss on pine bark." A sharp laugh followed, alone, unreturned. Every gaze turned to Galon. Even Arya, hiding behind a crate, froze, eyes gleaming with anticipation. "This is it," she whispered. "If someone spoke like that to me, I'd punch them. But Galon looks strong. He'll surely crush him." But Galon didn't flare with anger. Instead, he finally turned his head, looking past Theon as if he weren't worth acknowledgement. "Robb," he said calmly, "show me somewhere else. Preferably a place without outsiders." The word outsiders landed like cold steel. Theon's face flushed with fury, hands snapping to the hilt of his sword. The yard went silent. The tension tightened, brittle and dangerous. And the next moment would decide whether blood spilled. Chapter 5, The Clash. Galon's lips curved with the faintest trace of amusement as he watched Theon glare at him with rising fury. From the beginning, this had been his goal. "If I strike first, I break my word to Ned. If Ned sees me as the aggressor, the betrothal becomes fragile. But if Theon draws first and I defend myself, that changes everything. And if it sows distrust between Robb and Theon, even better." Theon Greyjoy, ward, hostage, and childhood companion to the Stark heir, held influence over Robb Stark that Galon could not allow to continue. Power was position. And he would not tolerate an enemy standing at Robb's right hand. "I need him away from Robb before the War of the Five Kings begins. Only when Robb realizes that an Ironborn remains an Ironborn, even if his name is Theon, will he trust me to remain behind and guard the north." In Galon's mind, Theon had only one true purpose: to return to the Iron Islands and provoke Balon Greyjoy into raiding the north. That would give Galon the perfect stage to intervene to crush the Ironborn, save the lands they threatened, and prove himself indispensable to northern lords. One victory. One rescue. And Deepwood Motte and its future would be secured. But Theon was hesitating, hand on his sword, yet unwilling to draw. Galon's gaze lowered to Theon's fingers tightening around the hilt. Still cautious. Still thinking. Do I push him further? He prepared another insult, sharpened and ready, when a commanding voice boomed across the yard. What's all this? Why are you all standing still? Galon turned and saw an older knight approaching, thick-bodied, white-haired, and walking with the confidence of one who had spent a lifetime drilling discipline into soldiers. Sir Roderick Castle Winterfell's master-at-arms. He marched forward as if unaware of the tension thick enough to cut. The king will be here soon. Winterfell is a storm of preparations. And yet you stand around doing nothing. Move. All of you. Those who had lingered scattered immediately. Even Arya, who had been secretly watching, disappeared at once, hurrying off to share the drama with someone who would definitely react. In moments, only Galon, Robb, Jon, Bran, Rickon, and Theon remained, along with Sir Roderick, who now fixed his gaze on Theon. You as well, Theon. Lady Catelyn needs extra hands in the keep. Go. Relief washed across Theon's face, though he tried to hide it behind a forced scowl. As angry as he was, the size and presence of Galon were impossible to ignore, and if he lost a duel here, his pride would never recover. He shot Galon a venomous glare, a silent promise, then stalked away. Robb noticed. A small seed of unease took root in his expression. But he quickly masked it and turned to Galon with a lighter tone. Galon, this is Sir Roderick Castle, Master-at-Arms of Winterfell, and the one who trained Jon and me. Galon spared only a brief look in the direction Theon left before responding politely. Well met, Sir Roderick. Sir Roderick bowed his head slightly, and well met to you, Lord Glover. Then, with a sigh, he added quietly. Please pay no mind to what just happened. Theon's temper runs ahead of his judgment. He meant no great offense. Galon shook his head. Perhaps so. But I doubt he and I will ever get along. There was nothing hostile in his tone, merely certainty. Sir Roderick studied him for a moment. He knew enough of northern history to understand that there was blood and bitterness between the Ironborn and House Glover. Trying to force friendship between them would be like asking wolves and krakens to share a den. He stroked his beard thoughtfully, then addressed Robb. See to our guest. And for the sake of the gods, no more trouble today. Winterfell has enough chaos already. Robb nodded with a resigned sigh. Sir Roderick then motioned for Jon to join him, and the two departed. Once they left, Robb straightened and spoke with renewed energy. Come, Galon. I'll take you to meet Sansa and Arya. Bran, watch Rickon. Bran nodded dutifully and took his younger brother's hand. Robb gave Rickon one final pat on the head, then led Galon toward the inner corridors of Winterfell. Elsewhere in the castle, Arya burst through the door of the sewing room, peeking first to ensure Septa Mordane was nowhere in sight. The coast was clear. She sprinted inside. Sansa! Sansa! Sansa didn't look up. Seated by the window with perfect posture, she continued stitching delicate thread through soft fabric, calm and graceful. Arya stomped closer. Still nothing. So Arya turned, spotting Beth Castle nearby. Beth! Guess what I just saw? Beth raised an eyebrow. You shot arrows again and made Bran angry. Jenny Poole giggled softly behind her hand. Arya scoffed dramatically and puffed her chest. No. I saw Galon. Galon Glover. Sansa's betrothed. And he was just about to fight Theon. Needle paused. Sansa's fingers froze. A heartbeat later, she pricked her own hand and barely noticed the sting. Her head lifted slowly, eyes wide. He arrived. Chapter 6, The Gift. Galon, you shouldn't have ignored him like that. As they walked the corridor, Robb spoke with the same tone Sir Roderick had used earlier, half frustrated older brother, half mediator. Theon is just. Robb stopped mid-sentence and turned to face him. He's proud. Too proud, maybe. He wants to be seen, to matter. His temper is rough, yes, but if you give him time, the two of you could be friends. Galon stood still and shook his head. Forgive me, Robb, but that is something I cannot do. Robb frowned, confusion and irritation mixing together. Why not? You gave your word to my father. Why can't you let this go and take one small step back? His tone wasn't angry, but disappointment lay beneath it. Galon understood that one careless answer could put a wall between them. So he softened his expression, exhaled, and bowed his head slightly. My apologies, Robb. I acted too quickly and put you in a difficult place. But as for stepping back... He paused, letting the moment grow still. Because the North remembers. Robb's breath caught. Galon continued, voice even. You are right. I made Ned Stark a promise. I will not provoke Theon. But that does not mean I must bow. This is not temper. This is honor. I am a Glover. My blood is rooted deep in the North. If an Ironborn can insult me openly in Winterfell and I retreat without answering, how could I ever stand before Sansa as her betrothed? Robb opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. Fragments of memory surfaced. His father's warnings. The somber day of the funeral. The stories of Ironborn raids and Glover dead. Understanding struck him sharply. Annoyance faded into realization and guilt. Of course. Before he could speak, Galon's voice softened further. Do not worry. I will cause no trouble while I remain here. I will avoid him when I can. You have nothing to fear. Robb sighed, shoulders dropping. You shouldn't have to avoid him. I will speak with Theon. But enough of this for now. Come, Sansa is waiting. He turned to continue down the corridor, but Galon stopped him. Robb. One moment. He signaled to a passing servant. Find my captain, Roger, in the kitchens. Tell him to bring the gift I prepared for Lady Sansa. When the servant hurried off, Robb raised a brow. You brought her a gift. Galon only smiled. You will see soon enough. It's something you have never seen or heard of. Robb's curiosity lit instantly. Before long, the servant returned with Captain Roger, who carried a silk-wrapped wooden box. Lord Galon, the gift. Galon accepted it carefully. Thank you, Roger. You may return. Once the captain left, Robb leaned closer. It isn't jewels, is it? Galon smiled again and said nothing. Robb groaned quietly. Soon, they reached the embroidery room. Inside, Septa Mordain hovered like a hawk, correcting posture and scrutinizing every stitch. Quiet laughter fluttered among the girls seated together. Galon leaned forward and peeked inside. Sansa Stark sat by the window, auburn hair tumbling softly, eyes distant, expression troubled. Robb called gently. Sansa. Every head turned. Arya reacted first. She jumped to her feet and pointed. That's him. Galon Glover. Beth Castle and Jane Poole immediately leaned together, whispering and giggling behind their hands. Even Sansa, despite herself, glanced over. Galon stepped into the room with confidence, the silk-wrapped box supported against his arm. He bowed politely. My apologies if I startled you, ladies. I hope my appearance is not too disappointing. Laughter bubbled through the room. Even Sansa's tension eased a little, her fingers relaxing in her lap. She studied him quietly. He wasn't what Arya described. Broad-shouldered, yes, but his posture was disciplined rather than brute-like. Tall, dark brown hair, deep red eyes uncommon in the north. His features were strong and earnest, more dependable than harsh. Not a prince from a song. But solid. Safe. Arya definitely exaggerated. Sansa shot her sister a glare before rising gracefully. Good day, Lord Galon. Winterfell welcomes you. Galon stepped closer, voice warm. A pleasure to finally meet you, Lady Sansa. I have brought a small gift. I hope it pleases you. She glanced to Robb. He nodded. So she accepted the gift and set it gently upon a nearby table. "What is it? Open it and see." She lifted the silk. A wooden box appeared beneath, carved into a blue and white checkered pattern, polished smooth, surprisingly elegant. Her fingertips traced the surface, then paused at the lock. Real gold. Her interest brightened. Perhaps jewels? A tiara, a necklace? But when she opened the lid, her smile faltered. Inside were 32 small carved figures. Half dark, half pale, arranged in neat formation. Not silver. Not gemstones. Just wood. Beautifully carved, but still only wood. Disappointment flickered in her eyes. "Mother did warn me. Deepwood Motte has nothing but trees." Galon saw it and smiled, undisturbed. "Lady Sansa. Allow me to introduce your gift properly. This is Westerosi chess." Chapter 7, Westerosi chess. Westerosi chess. Sansa repeated the name softly. She had never heard anything like it, though she had played tile games with her maidservants before. Galon nodded. "Yes. Westerosi chess." Of course no one in the room knew what that was. He had invented the name moments ago. He stepped closer, standing across from Sansa. "Allow me to show you how it works, my lady." When she gave a small nod, he began taking out the pieces one by one. Then he flipped the box over and unfolded it flat. Before their eyes, a board appeared, carved in alternating squares. Galon set the pieces in place with calm precision. Soon, a full set of what he remembered as chess appeared on the board. Robb, who had been lingering at the doorway, finally stepped nearer and peered over Galon's shoulder. "This is the gift you spoke of?" he asked. "The thing no one has ever seen or heard. It looks almost the same as tile games." Galon smiled. "It was inspired by them. Westerosi chess is a new way to play. 2 players. One commands the dark pieces, the other the light. The one who traps the enemy king wins." Robb was impressed that Galon had created a new game, but he still shook his head slightly. "I thought you would bring jewelry, or a pretty trinket. Something girls like. But a game." He glanced toward Sansa and lowered his voice. "If I had known, I might have stopped you. Beth and Jane look bored already. And if people hear of this..." He could already imagine northern lords laughing about the Glover boy offering a box of carved wood to his future bride. Sansa and her friends did indeed seem unenthused. For the sake of manners, they said nothing. Even Septa Mordane's expression cooled. In her mind, Sansa was a high-born lady of great promise. That this Glover heir dared bring a mere game as a first gift felt like disrespect to House Stark itself. She was already thinking of how to mention this to Lady Catelyn later. Galon read the room clearly. "I would love to bring her jewels," he thought. "If only I could afford them." Deepwood Motte was poor. Very poor. Rich in trees, poor in coin. From the outside, the lands of House Glover looked vast. From Torrens Square to the western forests and the wild coastlines, their holdings were huge. Yet most of that land was dense forest. Farm fields were rare. For generations, the Glovers had lived deep in the Wolf's Wood, under the gaze of the old gods. They had never cleared the forest in any serious way. Some said that in the age of the first men, the Glovers had struck a pact with the children of the forest. Others whispered that Glover blood carried something of the old magic in it. The house neither confirmed nor denied. In truth, their wealth lay in fur and timber. 4 forest clans lived under their protection, hunting the woods and trading pelts to Deepwood Motte. Those pelts were sold for coin, and that coin was spent on food, tools, and weapons. When Galon took charge of the family vault, he found lots of steel and leather. Not many shining trinkets. When Ned's letter arrived, inviting him to Winterfell, he had not been concerned about mustering soldiers. He could summon 2,000 seasoned men if needed. But a personal gift for Sansa Stark? That was another battle entirely. He could not present her a knight's sword and call it a day. Gifts should match the heart of the one receiving them. If the girl had been Arya, a fine blade might have won her over at once. But Sansa was not Arya. Raised under Catelyn's careful eye, Sansa had studied music, song, dance, and the graceful arts of noble ladies. She loved things that were delicate, refined, and proper. A rough northern trinket would do her no favors. Yet rare gems and golden necklaces were far beyond what Deepwood Motte could spare. So Galon had stood in the storeroom staring at rows of armor and blades, wondering how to turn steel and wood into something worthy. Then the idea came. Not from gold. From wood. What if he carved a game for her? Something that demanded thought and strategy. In all of House Stark, Sansa alone, he believed, would one day be truly suited for the Game of Thrones. What better gift than a game of minds? Deepwood Motte was full of skilled carpenters. Galon had described each piece in detail, and the craftsmen had worked through the night to shape this first set. Now, seeing the cool reception, he was not surprised. He had expected it. So he simply smiled and spoke on. "Before I came here, I did consider jewels," he said. "Truly. But I decided against them." Arya chimed in at once. "Why?" Galon gave her an approving look, then answered loudly enough for everyone. "Because I searched and found nothing that could make Lady Sansa more beautiful. In my eyes, her beauty is a gift from the old gods. Any ornament would only spoil it. So I chose instead to bring something unique, something that carries my thought and effort. Which led me to create Westerosi chess." His gaze settled on Sansa, whose cheeks had flushed at the praise. "Forgive my boldness, my lady," he said gently. "Half a year ago, I asked Robb about your likes and dislikes. He told me you favored gentle pastimes. So I wondered if I might craft a game made especially for you." Galon stood in the center of the room, speaking clearly while every ear listened. Ordinary tile games do not ask much of the mind. They do not suit someone as clever as Lady Sansa. But Westerosi chess is different. He gestured to the board. "The rules are simple. The depth is not. To win, you must trap the enemy king. To do that, you need patience, talent, and clear thought. You must read every move your opponent makes. You must think like them while staying 2 steps ahead." Sansa's eyes began to shine. She had never heard a game described that way. Galon turned slightly toward Robb. "It is like leading an army to war," he said. "You must think of supplies, scouts, terrain. You must guess the enemy's plans and hide your own." As he spoke, he seemed entirely at ease, confident, and focused. Sansa watched him, fascinated. Someone had gone to all this trouble for her. Had invented a game. Had carved pieces. Had thought not of gold and glitter, but of her mind. "He must care for me very much," she thought, blinking. Chapter 8, The Seed of Discord. Galon remained unaware of Sansa's rosy-cheeked assumptions. But Robb? Robb was easy to read. The moment Galon mentioned strategy, battle planning, and commanding forces, the young wolf's eyes burned with excitement. Chess meant little to him. War, however, was another story. Robb leaned forward eagerly. "Galon, how do the rules work? How do the pieces move? Teach me while we play. Come, let's start a match." He reached to touch the board, only for Sansa to swat his hand away. "Robb Stark," she scolded, eyes wide. "This is my gift. You cannot simply grab it." Robb froze, half sheepish, half defiant. Galon nearly laughed aloud. Of course, he thought. No matter how perfect the invention, someone must make others desire it. He stepped between them smoothly. "Westerosi chess requires 2 players, so why not begin together? Lady Sansa may play first while I explain the rules." Neither sibling objected, so Galon began. Westerosi chess contains 32 pieces, 16 per side. These, he gestured to the front line, are soldiers. They guard the ranks. He tapped another piece with a carved crown. And this is the king. When he is trapped beyond escape, the war is decided. He explained slowly and clearly, enough that even Septa Mordain, who had never cared for games, found herself listening. Soon, Robb and Sansa began their first hesitant match. Both were instantly absorbed. While Galon guided the pair through their first moves, Winterfell bustled elsewhere. In the guest wing, Lady Catelyn inspected rooms prepared for the royal family. With Maester Luwin beside her, she directed servants. More candles here. Fresh flowers for the table. Luwin adjusted his sleeves. I have already fetched 8 barrels of ale from the cellars, my lady. 2 more will be brought up later. Good, Catelyn murmured. Robert loves his drink. And the Queen? She hesitated at Tyrion's name, grimacing. And the King's brother by marriage, Lord Tyrion. He will require accommodations as well. Already prepared, Luwin said calmly. And as he is, shorter than most, his chamber is on the ground floor. Catelyn nodded absently. Her mind was elsewhere, on Ned's promises, on the Glover boy, and most of all, on Sansa. The marriage felt like a thorn beneath her ribs. Luwin noticed her silence but did not pry. When they reached the lower stairwell, footsteps suddenly echoed around the corner. A boy nearly collided with them. Seat, Luwin began. Catelyn recognized him first. Theon. Her brows narrowed. Weren't you in the training yard with Bran? Theon straightened quickly, adopting a respectful posture. Sir Roderick sent me to assist you, my lady. He said you needed help. Catelyn stared at him, expression sharpening. She had not seen Sir Roderick since breakfast. So why would he send Theon? Suspicion flickered behind her eyes. Theon, she said quietly, what do you need? The truth, if you would prefer to skip the excuse. Her tone was not unkind, simply direct. Theon hesitated. His first instinct was to tell her about Galon insulting him. But then another thought struck him sharper, meaner. A path. A chance to wound. A chance to sabotage. His lips curled faintly. My lady, do you know about Galon of House Glover? I do. Then you should also know what he did today. He spun a tale mostly true, but sharpened deliberately. He flattered Jon Snow, called him a true Stark, spoke of wolf blood in his veins. He compared him to Robb. As if they were equals. Catelyn went still. Her eyes darkened. Few things stirred her temper faster than the name Jon Snow standing beside her true-born children. And then, she asked, voice steady but edged like cold steel. He ignored me, Theon continued, letting bitterness lace his voice. Mocked me publicly. Said I was no true northerner and no brother to this household. He lowered his head. Such a man wishes to wed Lady Sansa. Catelyn's jaw tightened. 2 names tangled together in her mind, Jon and Galon, like a sickness she could not spit out. Her stomach twisted. Robb. Sansa. Inheritance. Danger. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat. I understand. You may go. Theon bowed, schooling his expression until he turned away, then a satisfied smile spread slowly across his face. With Lady Catelyn standing in your way. His eyes narrowed, cold with spite. Let us see how you marry Sansa now, Galon Glover. Chapter 9, Sansa's Delight. Winterfell's embroidery room was no longer quiet. Galon stood behind Robb, watching calmly as the match on the board neared its end. It was Robb's turn to move and he was cornered. His army had been reduced to a lone king, and that king was trapped between Sansa's 2 bishops with nowhere left to run. Robb leaned closer, squinting, searching for a miracle move. There wasn't one. Galon already knew how this would end. Sansa learns quickly, he thought, genuinely impressed. Most new players spent games learning the pieces. Sansa was already constructing traps. 3 moves later, she slid her bishop forward with a satisfied flick of her fingers. Checkmate. Robb, you've lost again. Robb stared at the board in disbelief, as if sheer confusion might change the result. Why is it always only my king left, he muttered. Galon nearly laughed. Robb played like a charging warrior, bold, aggressive, and utterly uninterested in defense. Sansa simply waited, trading piece after piece until nothing remained to protect him. Robb finally tipped his king, defeated. Sansa sat straighter, eyes bright with triumph. Again, Robb. One more round. She immediately began resetting the board. She was hooked, there was no question. But Robb was done. Not again. No. Not happening. He rose from the chair with the exhaustion of a man who had survived battle rather than lost a game. Ah, come on, Arya groaned from the far side of the room. Play while Septa Mordane isn't here to drag us back to sewing. Of course Arya had slipped out during their first match and returned only because no one had noticed yet. Robb waved her off. Father wants me to show Galon around Winterfell. I can't stay and be beaten to death. He gave Galon a pointed look, a silent plea for backup. Galon stepped forward smoothly. Lady Sansa, perhaps Jane, and Beth would enjoy playing next. 2 heads snapped up instantly, Beth Castle and Jane Poole, who had been silently dying of impatience. They nodded with the eagerness of pups seeing meat. Sansa considered, then nodded graciously. Very well. Galon bowed lightly. Then I wish you a pleasant game, ladies. He turned, but before he could take a full step, a soft voice called after him. Lord Galon. He stopped and met her eyes. Sansa hesitated, then gathered enough courage to speak. I like the gift very much. The room went still. Galon smiled, warm and subtle. I am glad. Then my effort was worth it. Her cheeks flushed pink, and she lowered her gaze quickly. Behind her, Beth and Jane exchanged silent screams of excitement. Even Robb looked like he was trying not to grin. Galon bowed again and followed Robb out. The moment the door closed, chaos erupted. I go first. No, I do. You played last time. You weren't even here. Robb winced. The entire castle will hear about this, he groaned. Galon chuckled. At least they aren't talking about your losses. Robb glared at him. Help me beat her. Teach me how to win and I'll show you something worth seeing. Galon raised a brow. What sort of place? Robb smiled mysteriously. You'll see once I stop losing. Galon laughed once. Then we have a deal. A deal, Robb echoed. They walked together toward the guest wing. As they approached, servants rushed hurriedly along the corridors, tapestries hung, floors polished, torches trimmed. Winterfell was preparing for royalty. At last, they reached the rooms. And just as Galon was about to look over the chamber prepared for him, voices carried from the next room, one unmistakably sharp and composed. More candles, Maester Luwin. Tyrion Lannister is known to read late into the night. Robb mouthed silently, my mother. Then, as if hoping it would improve things, he called out. Mother. Lady Catelyn Stark turned. Her eyes met Robb's first warm. Then they shifted to Galon and the warmth vanished. Robb introduced them. Mother, this is Galon Glover. Galon bowed respectfully. Good day, Lady Stark. Maester Luwin. The Maester nodded kindly. Welcome to Winterfell, Lord Galon. Catelyn said nothing. She looked at him the way someone might study a strange weapon, unsure whether it was useful or dangerous. Her silence stretched just long enough to chill the room. Robb cleared his throat. Mother. Still Catelyn said nothing. Galon, sensing the tension, spoke gently. If there is anything lacking in the arrangements, Lady Stark, I will not trouble anyone. I am grateful simply to be received. Her expression did not soften. If anything, something colder flickered there. Resentment. Suspicion. A judgment already formed. The air tightened like drawn bowstring. And Galon finally understood someone had already spoken to her. Someone had whispered poison. The War of Shadows had begun long before swords ever would. Underscore 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 underscore. Up to 20 chapters ahead on Patreon. Patreon.com/exorath. Chapter 10, Catelyn's Disgust. Mother. Robb's voice finally cut through the strange silence in the room. Galon straightened and met Lady Catelyn's gaze head-on. It took only a heartbeat for him to understand. Her eyes held no warmth, no politeness, only cold distance. And beneath that, a flicker of open dislike. As if he had already offended her in some unforgivable way. Is it because of Sansa? He kept his face calm, but his thoughts sharpened. Did Ned promise her this match against her will? In the story I remember, she wanted Sansa married to a southern lord somewhere warm, safe, far from northern hardship. Even without the king coming north, she would have pushed Sansa toward the south. So if Ned now promises Sansa to me, she should at least be upset with him, not me. But this look, this is more than simple disapproval. Something else happened. An uneasy feeling crept into his chest. Until now, everything in Winterfell had unfolded almost exactly as he'd expected. Ned's promise. Sansa's reaction. Robb's friendship. All according to plan. Catelyn's hostility was the first crack. Calm down. Do not overreact. Until the betrothal is sealed, I cannot afford a single misstep. I need to find out who or what turned her against me. He let his eyes drift briefly toward Robb. If I push him a little, he might tell me what she thinks. Catelyn noticed that look. So. Not just my daughter, now my son as well? Seats and titles, that's all he sees. Her anger cooled into a hard, brittle edge. If not for Robb and Maester Luwin standing there, she might already have ordered Galon out of the room. Robb, she said finally, ignoring Galon entirely, what are you doing here? Robb hesitated, caught between blood and friendship. Father asked me to show Galon around Winterfell, he said carefully. I brought him to see his chamber and check if anything is missing. If you don't need me, Mother, I should finish what he asked of me. Catelyn deliberately turned away from Galon, addressing only Luwin. Maester Luwin, arrange Tyrion Lannister's room as we discussed. We will look over the kitchens next. Then she added, almost as an afterthought, Robb, come with me. Tom should trim your beard before the king arrives. Mother. Robb glanced at Galon, torn. I still have Father's task to complete. Perhaps I can join you later. Jon and Theon can help. At the name Jon, Catelyn's reaction was instant. No. Her refusal was sharp and absolute. Any servant can walk a guest through the castle. I called you here to teach you how to behave before a king. House Stark is Warden of the North. Our manners reflect our honor. She let her eyes flick briefly, pointedly, toward Galon. We cannot afford to look as ill-bred as certain others, greedy for favor and blind to their place. Galon's gaze hardened. He understood perfectly. She wasn't just dismissing him, she was accusing him of grasping for power he didn't deserve. And while it was true he sought Winterfell's strength, she was stripping away the courtesy most highborns hid behind. A line was being drawn. He almost answered her there and then. Words sharpened in his mind, cold, cutting, dangerous. But Maester Luwin stepped in first, coughing lightly. Lady Catelyn, we should be going. He turned to Robb. Go with your lady mother. I will see that Jon and Theon are informed of any tasks that concern them. Robb opened his mouth, still wanting to object. Galon spoke before he could. Go, Robb. His tone was calm again. Lady Stark is right, you should be with her before the king arrives. I can rest here a while. When you are finished, come find me. He understood Catelyn now. She did not want Sansa tied to him. She did not want Robb bound to him either. Trying to win her over would be like asking winter to thaw out of season. Better to retreat this once and make it clear he was not the one causing friction. Robb studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. I'll come back soon, he promised. Galon stepped aside, clearing the doorway. Catelyn swept past him as if he were made of stone, not flesh, not a word, not a glance. Luwin followed, pausing only to offer Galon a weary, apologetic look. Robb was last. He clapped a hand to Galon's shoulder in passing, a quiet gesture that said, I know this isn't fair. But then he, too, was gone. Galon remained alone in the doorway, back straight, hands loose at his sides. He watched Catelyn's figure disappear down the corridor. A brief flash of steel lit his eyes, gone almost as quickly as it came. She has no intention of accepting me. She will do everything she can to break this betrothal. I can't let that happen. Ned had said the king would arrive in 3 days. 3 days for Catelyn to scheme. 3 days for others to whisper. Do I need a distraction, he wondered. Something to pull her attention away from me. For a moment, an image surfaced in his mind, a boy falling from a tower, legs shattered. Bran. No. He shut the thought down immediately. Not that. Not a child. I may not be a good man, but there are lines I will not cross. He was still thinking when a faint sound cut through his thoughts. A rough caw from somewhere above. On the outer wall, a lone raven had perched, head turning slowly, black eyes watching the courtyard below. It shifted, feathers rustling, then launched itself into the air. Moments later, it landed on a wooden beam not far from where Galon stood. Croak, croak. The calls pulled him from his thoughts. He looked up and met the raven's gaze. In that instant, something cold slid into him. A sharp, alien awareness flooded along his spine, burrowing deeper than thought. The world seemed to tilt. And then the change began. Underscore 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 underscore. Up to 20 chapters ahead on Patreon. Patreon.com/exorath. Chapter 11, The Invitation of the Three-Eyed Raven. The world folded in on itself. Light twisted. Time recoiled. Galon staggered forward as if pushed from another reality, breath tearing in and out of his lungs. He braced one hand against his racing heart, the other reaching for balance while his vision swam with green motes of floating light. They drifted like fireflies. Silent. Watchful. What is this place? What happened just now? The raven? Was that him? There was no answer. Only the eerie stillness of a place that felt neither dream nor memory, but something older than both. Galon took a careful step. Crack. The sharp sound jolted him. He looked down. The ground beneath his feet was not earth but broken mirrors, spread wide like shattered ice on a frozen lake. And inside those fractured reflections, scenes played like living windows. Ned praying at the heart tree. Jon speaking with Sir Roderick. Sansa whispering secrets with her friends. Bran climbing a tower with reckless delight. And one frame, the most recent, showed his encounter with Lady Catelyn. Galon froze. His red eyes narrowed and then, strangely, glowed. The image shifted as if answering an unspoken command, rewinding itself until it showed someone else. Theon Greyjoy. Theon stood before Catelyn, speaking fast, agitated, shaping her mood word by word. And with each sentence, Catelyn's expression hardened into anger, then contempt. Galon's expression flattened into something cold and lethal. So it was you, he murmured. A pulse of power rippled through the space as if the world itself had reacted to his realization. He straightened, eyes sharp. So be it, Theon Greyjoy. If you're the first obstacle, then you're the first piece to remove. As that thought hardened in him, the floating green lights stirred, gathering, rippling, forming symbols in the air like ink on parchment. A message. Tonight. Gods would meet. The instant the final word settled, the illusion shattered. Darkness swallowed everything. Galon stumbled back into reality. He braced himself against Winterfell's cold stone wall, chest rising and falling as the chill of the courtyard reminded him he was truly back. The raven was gone. But the memory remained too vivid, too deliberate to be a dream. That wasn't illusion, he muttered. That was magic. Green sight. His thoughts raced. The last green seer. The three-eyed raven. Bloodraven. Brynden Rivers. A figure older than kingdoms. Older than living memory. Why would he reach out to me? I haven't interfered. Not yet. Another thought sliced in, unwelcome. Did he sense the shift? Did taking Sansa alter something he foresaw? Does he see what I plan? He ran a hand across his jaw, considering. Why show me Theon speaking to Catelyn? And why a meeting, tonight, at the Gods' Wood? Questions tangled in his mind, but one truth stood clear. Avoiding the invitation was impossible. In the north, the Gods' Wood did not belong to lords or kings. It belonged to the old gods. To green seers. To him. Galon exhaled slowly. Whether I go or not, he already sees me, so I go. A voice broke his thoughts. Lord Galon. Galon turned. Jon Snow approached with an easy stride and a rare smile. Jon. Galon blinked away lingering dizziness. What brings you? Jon stopped in front of him and replied, almost proudly, Robb sent me. Lady Catelyn needed him. So he asked me to finish showing you the castle. For a moment, Galon almost told him to leave, his mind still half in that strange realm. But Jon shook his head. No, I gave my word. And Robb wouldn't leave a guest unattended. There was something warm in that simple logic, simple, but dignified. Galon nodded. Very well. Then walk with me. They began moving through Winterfell's stone corridors. Anywhere you'd like to see first? Jon asked. Galon answered absently, still half watching the shadows. The highest place in Winterfell. The view might clear my head. Jon chuckled. Then you're thinking of the broken tower. We call it the Old Watchtower, but most people just call it the ruined tower now. Lightning struck it 100 years ago. No one's repaired it. Except Bran climbs it constantly. Galon lifted a brow. Bran. Jon grinned, already amused by the memory. He climbs everything. Walls, chimneys, roofs, even the godswood trees. Lord Stark once punished him by ordering him to stay there and pray. He paused for effect. Next morning, they found him asleep at the top of the heart tree. Galon laughed, genuinely. Jon glanced toward him, then hesitated before asking quietly, I saw Lady Catelyn earlier. She didn't seem pleased with you. Is something wrong? He rushed to add, not that it's my place to pry. I just... Galon waved it off. It's nothing. She simply dislikes me. Jon blinked in confusion. But you're meant to be betrothed to Sansa. Galon gave a small shrug. Some things even the old gods can't explain. He paused, then added with a crooked grin, maybe it's the seven instead. Jon stiffened for a heartbeat, then, understanding the joke, let out a rare laugh. Two men, both unwelcome under the same roof, sharing the same bitter humor. Their laughter echoed along the hall, light, careless, unguarded. Neither noticed the shadow passing overhead, nor the raven perched on the battlements watching them leave. Underscore 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 underscore. Up to 20 chapters ahead on Patreon. Patreon.com/exorath. Chapter 12, Ambition. With Jon accompanying him, Galon spent the entire afternoon wandering through Winterfell. The two were of similar age, their temperaments aligned, and they got along naturally well. More importantly, both Jon and Galon were disliked by Catelyn. That shared experience allowed their bond to form quickly. Under Galon's easy social grace, Jon nearly came to see him as a true friend. By the time evening approached, Jon finally opened his heart and revealed his confusion about the future. High atop the bell tower, the two of them stood side by side before the great bronze bell, watching the last sunset of the long summer fade. Jon looked lost, his voice barely above a whisper. "Galon. I've never really known what my future is supposed to be. I can't inherit Winterfell like Robb. I can't be one of his bannermen like Bran someday. I can't fight for him. I'm only a bastard. Maybe my fate really is to join the Night's Watch, just like Theon said." Galon's eyes shifted. He shook his head. "Jon, you're thinking far too narrowly. Why should a bastard be unable to accomplish anything?" Jon Snow lowered his head, his voice faint, as though trying to deny himself. "The world mocks bastards. How could someone like me achieve anything?" Seeing Jon so discouraged, Galon didn't comfort him immediately. Instead, he asked a different question. "Jon, have you ever heard of House Justman?" Jon shook his head, puzzled. House Justman once ruled the Riverlands for more than 200 years as kings of the Trident. Their founder, Benedict Rivers, was a bastard. Benedict the Bold spent over 30 years uniting and defeating the scattered forces of the Riverlands. In the end, he was crowned king. "Jon, do you know what that means?" Excitement surged in Galon's chest, his voice rising with it. He turned to Jon, and the intensity in his crimson eyes held a magnetic pull that made Jon unable to look away. Galon didn't wait for Jon's answer. He spoke on his own, letting the conviction pour out. "Being born low is not a shame. Bending when needed, rising when possible, that is what makes a hero." Jon stared at Galon, captivated by the fire in his expression. The words seemed to hold a strange power, and before he realized it, he repeated them softly. "Being born low, is not a shame. Endurance and resolve make a hero." Galon nodded, his gaze drifting toward the sunset, filled with ambition. It was true. He came from Deepwood Motte, no wealth, no allies, no renown, no advantages. With only a little over 2,000 men from the Wolf's Wood, claiming the Iron Throne was all but impossible. He couldn't even conquer the North with that number. But so what? Everything depended on effort. Even if he had every advantage in the world, there would still be obstacles. But Galon knew something no one else did. He understood the future of this world, and he knew the true faces behind this game of power. That alone made him far better positioned than anyone. If he still couldn't seize the Iron Throne, it would mean he was no better than Joffrey. Hearing Galon's words, the dying embers in Jon's heart seemed to ignite again. Eagerly, he asked, "Galon, what should I do?" Galon smiled. "Set a goal and work toward it. That simple. That simple." Galon patted Jon's shoulder, taking on the air of a mentor guiding a student. "Jon, don't worry about whether a goal is unrealistic or whether you'll succeed. What matters is forcing yourself to move toward it, step by step. Even if you fail, it proves you tried, doesn't it?" Galon's heartfelt encouragement brought new life to the long-saddened Jon Snow. "But, how do I choose a goal in the first place?" Galon touched a finger to Jon's chest. "That's for you to decide. Others can help you in every way on the road to your goal. But the first spark, the ambition itself, must come from you." Watching Jon fall deep into thought, Galon couldn't help feeling pleased. "So this is why so many people liked playing mentor in my past life," he thought. "It really does feel great." From the start, Galon had his own plans for Jon. His foundations were too shallow. If he wanted the Iron Throne, he needed to gather every possible advantage. And talent was the most valuable of all. In the story of Westeros, Jon Snow, a protagonist, was undeniably exceptional. From joining the Night's Watch to rising as Lord Commander, every trial proved his capability. He acted on emotion sometimes, but never in a way that ruined him. How could Galon allow someone like that to waste years on the wall? At the moment, Jon was staring blankly at the last glow of sunset, lost in Galon's words. He kept whispering, "I need a goal, but what is my goal?" Galon simply stood by with a gentle smile, not interrupting. He too was thinking about his meeting in the Godswood later that night. Time passed slowly. As the final trace of sunlight vanished and the sky deepened into blue, footsteps echoed on the stone stairs. A servant appeared, visibly relieved to find both of them there. He bowed respectfully. "Lord Galon, Lord Stark invites you to dinner." Galon nodded. "I understand. I'll go now." The servant retreated. Galon clapped his hands lightly, pulling Jon out of his thoughts. "Dinner time. Let's head back. As for ambition, don't rush it. Sometimes the search for purpose is a journey in itself." Jon still looked confused. He didn't yet grasp the deeper meaning of Galon's words. Galon didn't explain further. He simply patted Jon's shoulder and walked down the stairs. "Come on, Lord Stark is waiting." Jon let out a soft "all right," composed himself, and followed. When they reached the Great Hall, candles were already lit. "Lord Stark, Lady Catelyn." Galon entered as if nothing unpleasant had happened earlier in the day, greeting the couple with perfect manners. Ned smiled. "We're all family here. No need for formality. Sit." Galon complied with a pleasant expression, taking a seat beside Bran despite Catelyn's disapproving gaze. Jon took his usual place at the far end beside Theon. As Galon settled in, Sansa stole a glance at him only to meet his eyes directly. She jolted like a startled fawn and quickly looked away. Galon smiled, and this only worsened Catelyn's mood. She had done everything she could to keep her daughter away from him, yet Sansa had shown interest first. Catelyn shot Sansa a sharp glare. Arya, seated beside her, caught the look and thought her mother was angry about her skipping needlework earlier. She shrank down in fear. Sansa, still drowning in embarrassment, noticed none of it. And so Galon's first dinner in Winterfell began with a strange, uneasy tension. Winterfell's meals were simple, just meat pie and vegetable salad. Ned didn't start any conversation, so everyone quietly finished their food with their own thoughts. When the meal ended, Ned rose to leave, intending to let the children spend time together, especially Galon and Sansa. As he stepped away, he offered one last reminder with a gentle smile. "Don't stay up too late. We have things to do tomorrow." The Stark children nodded. But Galon spoke up. "Lord Stark, before bed I'd like to go to the Godswood to pray." Ned was surprised for a moment, then assumed it must be a Deepwood Motte custom and nodded. "I'll have the guards let you through." Seeing Galon had no other requests, he took Catelyn's arm and left. The events of the day had already reached his ears. Tonight, he planned to have a long, private conversation with Catelyn. Underscore 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 underscore. Up to 20 chapters ahead on Patreon. Patreon.com/exorath. Chapter 13, After Dinner. Once Ned and Catelyn left, the atmosphere in the hall immediately grew lighter. Arya, who had been silent the entire time, finally relaxed. She'd been terrified her mother was about to scold her again, and the tension had ruined her appetite. Rickon ran excitedly to Robb, begging him to play knights with him. Robb ruffled Rickon's hair affectionately and agreed. Galon watched the scene with a gentle smile. As he glanced around the hall, his eyes met Theon's curious stare. The moment Galon remembered the warning given to him by the three-eyed raven, his expression sharpened with danger. Theon stiffened as if he'd been struck. He looked away immediately, his heart hammering with sudden fear. What did that look mean? Did Galon somehow know he had reported to Lady Catelyn earlier? Was he planning to take revenge? No, impossible. Aside from him and Lady Catelyn, no one else knew about it. Panicking at his own guilty conscience, Theon didn't dare stay any longer. After forcing himself to bid Robb farewell, he left the hall in a hurry. Jon watched the scene with a flicker of understanding crossing his eyes. He turned toward Galon only to see a knowing smile tugging at Galon's lips. Just as Jon was about to ask what he was thinking, Sansa suddenly lifted her head, summoning her courage. Galon! Galon's gaze softened instantly. Yes, Lady Sansa? Is there something I can help you with? Will you play 2 games of Westerosi chess with me? She hesitated, then added quickly, since you invented it, you must know the rules best. Robb is terrible at it. I want to play against you. As soon as she finished speaking as though afraid he'd refuse, she continued confidently. I played all day with Jane and Beth. None of them could beat me. If you can't win either, then Westerosi chess must not be a very good game. Galon paused, giving her a strange look. You mean you want me to go all out? Sansa nodded with absolute confidence. She had only learned the game today, but after beating Robb and the others several times, she believed she already understood all the essentials of the game. Even if Galon created it, she wasn't intimidated. Seeing her so certain, Galon could only accept. In his previous life, he had studied chess on his own for a period of time and was quite familiar with many strategic patterns. On Earth, he wouldn't dare call himself a master. But in Westeros, he was convinced he was unbeatable, at least for now. Sansa retrieved the chess box she had placed in the corner earlier. Galon joined her, and the two sat facing each other to set up the pieces. Before beginning, Galon asked again with a smile, truly all out? Sansa responded confidently. She did not believe he was much stronger than she was. Still, to be safe, she chose her preferred opening, playing white. As the game began, Robb and Rickon quieted down. Jon, Bran, and Arya gathered around to watch. Sansa pushed her pawn to e4. Galon immediately responded with c5. Anyone familiar with chess would have recognized it instantly. Galon was using the Sicilian defense. The two exchanged moves fiercely, neither yielding ground. But soon, the balance tipped. With flexible variations of the Sicilian defense, Galon easily broke through Sansa's formation. He pressed forward relentlessly, overwhelming her completely. Sansa frowned in frustration, desperately trying to salvage the game. But no matter how hard she tried, she could only watch as one piece after another fell to Galon's precise attacks. When Galon captured her bishop, the game was essentially over. Her king had nowhere left to go. Even Jon, who barely understood the rules, could see she had been crushed utterly. Sansa's eyes reddened as she stared at the board. She couldn't believe she had been defeated so thoroughly. And she had even challenged him so boldly before the game. Thinking back on her earlier confidence, she felt so embarrassed she wanted to disappear into the floor. Robb burst out laughing. He had suffered a humiliating loss to Sansa earlier, and watching her get dismantled by Galon felt like sweet revenge. Jon, not knowing the context, nudged Robb lightly to stop him from making it worse. Galon also shot Robb a look to quiet him before turning to Sansa. Lady Sansa, you lasted far longer than I expected. When she didn't respond, he continued gently. Most people spend their first day just memorizing the rules. Those with talent like Robb can only barely play a real match. But only someone as clever as you could last this long against me. After all, I am the one who invented the game. The praise finally softened her expression. She blinked her bright blue eyes and asked softly, really? For a moment, Galon was so captivated by her flushed, luminous face that he forgot to speak. Only when Robb and Jon snickered beside him did he snap out of it, forcing himself to stay composed. Of course. I'd swear it by the old gods. With that, his gaze fell back onto her with a sudden intensity. The heat in his eyes made Sansa flustered. She turned away quickly, unable to meet his stare. Arya, however, was delighted by the spectacle and called out loudly, "Look! Look!" Sansa's blushing. Even Rickon looked up from where he had been playing. Sansa glared at Arya, furious. If Galon weren't here to see it and if she weren't terrified of appearing unladylike, Sansa would have leapt up to chase Arya around the hall. Luckily, the old nanny entered the hall just in time. "Lady Sansa, your mother asks to see you." Still flushed with embarrassment, Sansa murmured a soft good night to Galon and hurried away. Arya laughed even harder at her sister's retreat. "Arya, behave yourself. We have a guest," the old nanny chided gently. She took Rickon's hand and said to Robb, "I'll take Rickon back. Bran, you should go rest as well." Robb and Bran nodded. Once they left, Galon carefully packed each piece of the chess set into the wooden box. He handed it to Robb. "Please return this to Lady Sansa for me. It's getting late. I'm going to the God's Wood to pray, then I'll return to rest." Robb accepted the box. Jon added warmly, "Do you want me to go with you?" Galon shook his head with a smile. "No need. You should get some rest too." He said his goodbyes to the two of them, then turned and walked out of the hall. After orienting himself, Galon headed alone toward the God's Wood. Underscore 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 underscore. Up to 20 chapters ahead on Patreon. Patreon.com/exorath. Chapter 14, The God's Wood. If the heart of the north was Winterfell, then the heart of Winterfell was without a doubt the God's Wood. This 3-acre grove of ancient weirwood trees was said to have stood for more than 10,000 years. Bran the Builder had raised the castle around this primeval stand with the help of giants. The God's Wood itself was enclosed by a wall. To reach it from the solar one must cross the yard, pass down a long gallery into the guest rooms, and follow the passage that opened upon the iron gate into the God's Wood. Now the moon hung cold and sparse in the sky, the night air was like frost. A biting wind swept across Winterfell and made Galon shiver. On the dim parade ground he tightened his cloak and kept walking. Along the way he met several Winterfell guards on patrol, but Eddard had already given orders, and Galon passed through without hindrance to the iron gate that guarded the God's Wood. A torch was fixed to the wall on either side of the gate. Galon stood beneath the light and peered into the trees, searching for anything unusual. But the place was so primeval and dark that it seemed to swallow sound itself. Beneath the star-smeared sky, thick black trunks pressed close together, their twisted limbs weaving a vaulted canopy. From a distance the God's Wood looked like a sleeping, hulking thing waiting for someone to come. "Is the three-eyed raven really here?" Galon asked himself. He searched for movement but found none. Of course, the raven might be hidden deep in the wood, watching him through the heart tree. Never mind. I came this far. He shrugged inwardly. Whether it's fortune or doom, let the old gods decide. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. He set his hand on the hilt at his hip and strode beneath the iron gate into the trees. The night swallowed him. He followed a narrow path inward toward the pool at the God's Wood's heart. The ground underfoot was years of leaf mold, every step seemed absorbed by a thick carpet, leaving only a muffled, oppressive silence behind. The quiet made Galon uneasy, and he quickened his pace. Before long he found himself beside the black pool at the center of the God's Wood, beneath the heart tree itself. He stood staring at the carved face in the trunk, hollowed eye sockets stained with dried red sap that looked monstrously like blood under the night. The expression carved into the weirwood's face was melancholy and terrible. For a moment Galon had the unnerving sense that the carved face was looking back at him. Darkness, a strange atmosphere, the thought of the hidden three-eyed raven, every suggestion tightened his nerves. He scanned the gloom, searching for the raven, but saw only black branches overhead. Finally he fixed his gaze on the sorrowful face on the heart tree and called out. "I've come as agreed. Show yourself." His voice trembled faintly and echoed between pool and trunk, but there was no answer. It felt as if the whole godswood contained only Galon alive. He frowned, surveyed the grove again, and said in a sharper tone, "If you don't appear, I'll leave." Only silence returned. Galon's confidence wavered. Had he come on the wrong night? He made a circuit around the heart tree and found nothing. After a pause he decided to return and try again the next night. Still, before leaving, he followed northern custom and dropped to one knee before the heart tree to say a prayer. At that instant a few caws sounded from somewhere above, and then the air around him filled with green sparks. In a blink the world turned, and Galon found himself drawn into a vision. Space folded, time turned. The familiar sensation rose again, and this time he steadied himself in only a few breaths. He stood within a green-lit space and said coldly, "I came when I was asked. Lord, reveal yourself." The green motes swirled and gathered, and the shape of an old man took form before him. Galon studied the figure. The man's skin was ashen, gaunt to the bone. One eye was a black hollow, the other a red, bloodshot globe. His left leg was whole, below the right knee nothing remained. He leaned on a staff fashioned of old timber and regarded Galon with a long look before speaking. "Glover." The voice was dry and slow, as if unused to speech. Galon's heart tightened. He recognized the figure at once as the three-eyed raven Brynden Rivers. He raised his guard and probed cautiously. "Who are you? Why did you call me here?" The raven's pale face curved in a curious smile. He did not answer directly. Instead he tapped his staff on the ground once. The air froze. Galon found himself held fast, unable to move. The three-eyed raven's presence spread through the space, and an image of Winterfell began to rise around them. Under the raven's will, Winterfell's history raced backward, people and seasons rewound together. Ned is a man, Ned is a boy, recalled one scene dissolving into the next. The wild procession of visions made Galon's head spin. He felt sick, until a cool clarity came from his eyes, pushing the nausea away. His red gaze flared and the binding faded, he stumbled but regained his footing. Now he watched everything with keen focus. The vision changed. Where Winterfell had stood there rose a wooded hill. The Wolf's Wood. He recognized at once the forest where he had spent 6 months. He looked at the three-eyed raven, seeking understanding. The raven raised a finger to his lips, signaling him to watch. A tall, dark-haired first man stood upon the hill, and beside him a small woman of the children of the forest with red eyes. They raised their hands together, and below them ancient first men and children poured up the slope, shouting in old tongues. Galon's ears registered only rough sounds, but a meaning emerged in his mind. King of the first men, and the green seer. This is his mind guessed at once, the tall man was an ancestor of the Glover line. But who was the red-eyed child beside him? The sight confused Galon. He did not yet understand why the three-eyed raven had shown him this. He looked to the raven again, this time the old man did not hold back. Slowly approaching, the raven used the one red eye left to stare toward the vision and spoke in a dry, rasping voice. "Descendant of the Glovers, you guessed rightly. The first man and the green seer before you are your ancestors of the Glover line." Galon felt shock surge through him. He had heard the rumors that the Glovers hid children of the forest blood, but he had not expected it to be true. The three-eyed raven's form passed through the vision, and his long voice tugged at Galon's mind. "For many generations only you were born among the Glovers with the red eye of a green seer. And so?" The raven fixed him and a smile that was hard to read touched his lips. In that strange tone he laid a fate before Galon. "The pact between Glover and the old gods must be fulfilled by you. Underscore 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 underscore. Up to 20 chapters ahead on Patreon. Patreon.com/exorath. Chapter 15, The Prophecy. Before coming to the God's Wood, Galon had already speculated about the three-eyed raven's intentions. Perhaps the raven had foreseen a fragment of the future. Perhaps he had overheard one of Galon's secrets through the heart trees. Galon had spent 6 months in Deepwood Motte, he certainly hadn't sat idle all that time. But what he never expected was that the invitation had come because of his bloodline. The king of the first men? A red-eyed green seer? Children of the forest blood? A pact between the Glovers and the old gods? Stories that existed only as vague family legends had suddenly appeared before him, alive and undeniable. King of the first men. He brushed a finger across his red eyes, repeating the ancient title spoken by the vision. His heart surged uncontrollably. Only when the three-eyed raven's phantom came to stand beside him did Galon steady himself and meet its gaze. He knew this version of the raven was an illusion, just as the first men and the children earlier had been. The true Brindon rivers still lay far beyond the wall, fused with a heart tree deep within the ghost forest. So Galon wasn't afraid of being attacked. This illusion had no substance. And ever since he had broken free of the earlier trance so easily, Galon had a strange certainty, if he wished, he could probably shatter this illusion at any time. He considered this only briefly before pushing his doubts to the front. "Who are you, truly?" Galon asked calmly. "What pact between the Glovers and the old gods were you talking about? And surely you didn't invite me here just to show me visions and make conversation." The three-eyed raven let out a rasping laugh. "Of course not." With a tap of his staff, the illusions dissolved, revealing once more the green-lit void around them. Galon focused. Their true discussion was finally beginning. "I am a servant of the old gods, what the children of the forest call a green seer," the raven said. "Names no longer hold meaning for me. And my purpose?" A faint, unreadable smile curled at his lips. "Was simply to confirm whether you are the one the prophecy spoke of." "Prophecy?" Galon stiffened. The raven's answer was nothing like what he expected. "What prophecy?" he pressed. "The prophecy of the Savior." The raven's tone was slow, patient. "But it is too early to discuss it." "Too early?" Galon frowned. The three-eyed raven gave a strange, soft laugh. "You have awakened the green seer blood of the Glovers, yes, but talent takes time to become power. As for your questions, once you truly become a green seer, the answers will come." Galon stared at him in shock. Never in his life had he imagined he could become a green seer. For a moment an image of Bran the Broken flitted across his mind. Was he destined to replace Bran's role? Would he also lose his legs and spend his life bound to a weirwood throne? The thought unsettled him, and he asked again, unable to help himself, "A green seer? How do you know I have that gift?" "Just because of my red eyes." The three-eyed raven shook his head. "If you did not have the gift, you would not have seen any of what happened earlier today. Only those with green sight receive answers from the old gods." He didn't finish. The green plain trembled violently. Small cracks opened beneath their feet. "What?" Galon stepped back, seeing the fractures spreading. The illusion was collapsing. The raven frowned. "It seems our time is up. Glover, if you want answers, then come beyond the wall. These past months, I believe I can offer help with what you've been planning." As his voice faded, his body dissolved into a black three-eyed raven. It swept its wings and soared away, leaving Galon deep in thought. Space twisted again. As the vision unraveled, Galon heard the raven's final whisper, "The prophecy draws near. The final song of ice and fire will soon begin." Darkness swallowed his sight. When his vision returned, he was once again kneeling in the god's wood. "Why is it always like this?" Galon muttered, clutching his throbbing head. He staggered backward onto a moss-covered stone and sat, breathing hard. Only after several breaths did he steady himself. He raised his eyes to the face carved into the heart tree. His expression grew troubled. "What is this savior prophecy? Is it the prince that was promised? And what does any of it have to do with a pact between my family and the old gods?" The meeting had answered none of his questions, only created more. He felt as though unseen shadows closed in around him. A green seer, and he wants me to go beyond the wall. Galon stood slowly and touched his eyes, thinking. What could the three-eyed raven possibly offer? The children of the forest? The giants? There were too few clues, and the more he thought, the more tangled everything became. At last he drew a slow breath and forced the confusion aside. Whatever this prophecy is, and whatever game the raven is playing, it doesn't matter. My main goal is still the same, marry Sansa Stark. With his focus renewed, Galon bowed briefly to the heart tree, then turned and left. Behind him, the carved face seemed to watch him go. A cold wind rustled the leaves, whispering like a silent answer. The way out was quick. In only moments Galon reached the iron gate again. The torches there brought a welcome relief. Perhaps it was the strain of the vision, but once he stepped out of the God's Wood, exhaustion washed over him. His eyes felt heavy, sleep pressing down on him. He didn't linger and returned down the passage to his temporary chamber. He shut the door and collapsed onto the bed. Sleep overtook him immediately. He had no idea how much time passed before the three-eyed raven appeared again, this time in a dream. It flew ahead of him, guiding him through the sky. They crossed mountain peaks, passed over the wall, and entered the land of always winter. As Galon followed the raven through the swirling snow, a vision struck. Enormous roots twisted out of the void and pierced through his body. At the same time two mighty dragons burst forth, one breathing fire, the other ice. Fire and frost collided, consuming the roots, impaling him. Above it all the raven hovered, wings beating softly, watching as if witnessing something destined long ago. Underscore 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 underscore. Up to 20 chapters ahead on Patreon. Patreon.com/exorath. New chapter is coming soon. Write a review.